Okay, so we know that I have 3.5 kilograms of yarn in my stash that I wanted to use throughout the next year. Just what am I going to do with it? Hello, I'm Emma, also known as Wander&Create with Emma, and on this channel we talk all things knitting, crochet and other crafty pursuits. If you saw last week's episode, you'll know that one of my goals for this year is to use much more of my yarn stash than buy more yarn. So in preparation for that, I tipped out all of my yarn, untangled it all and did a thorough assessment of what I had. And from that, I weighed it all and concluded I had 3.5 kilograms of yarn, which doesn't seem much, but it's something to keep on top of. So along with some full skeins of leftover yarn, there is an awful lot of leftover yarn in my stash. In fact, I would say the majority of my stash is leftover yarn, including lots of tiny little balls. I'm just going to say right now, there is some building going on in the area around me. So if you hear some banging or drilling in the background, it's going to be that, but I'm hoping that they're going to wrap up soon. So having all these balls of leftover yarn really prompted me to do some research to see what patterns were out there that would be suitable for using up my leftover yarn. As a result, I have 16 patterns, both knitting and crochet, that I wanted to share with you in this video because I like the look of them and I think they'd be a great project if you're looking for stash busting patterns too. Now, some of these patterns I have made before, so they are tried and tested by me, but the majority are new to me. The metrics I had for selecting patterns were: number one, because they were designed intentionally to be using up leftover yarn, or because they're kind of a basic, simple knitting or crochet pattern that I think you could easily hack to, make it stripy or use colour work that's lots of different colours, etc, etc. Whereas garments, it's also been really important to me to make sure that the garment is designed size inclusively, at least according to the Craft Yarn Council standards, so that is up to a 6XL or 62-inch bust. If I've seen a garment pattern that I liked but is not graded to be size inclusive, then unfortunately I have not included it. So the patterns I've listed are all available from Ravelry, or at least linked to from Ravelry, and I created a favourites bundle for that. It's a scrappy patterns bundle, so you can find it there. I'll also create a Pinterest board to link to the patterns where I can, so you can access them there if Ravelry is not available to you, and I will summarise them in a blog on my website as well. The patterns I've included are a mixture of free and paid for patterns, and some of them, are free on the blog, but you can pay for the clear, ad-free PDF. So to go through this video, I've kind of grouped the patterns in vague topic categories like home decor and garments. And for each pattern, I'll just be sharing a little bit about the pattern, and then you can go and find more for yourself if you think it'll be interesting and you'd like to make it yourself. And just one more thing before I get into it properly. If you like this type of content and you're following a leftover yarn stash down project yourself this year, make sure you subscribe to this channel because I plan to do a lot more content like this as we go throughout the year. So thank you in advance. Okay, so to dive just straight into it, I'm going to start off with garments. And the first suggestion I have is one that I saw quite a number of years ago now, and it is really the perfect way to use up leftover yarn. It was designed specifically with that in mind. And that's the Alone Together sweater by Laerke. I'm so sorry because that is probably not how you pronounce their name. I think they are Swedish and my pronunciation is terrible. But this pattern is a sweater and it's a kind of made to measure. You figure out the size that you want and you have a base layer if you want, like a base yarn weight colour, and you simply just tie bits of leftover yarn you want into it to create this slightly stripy effect. So this is a free pattern, but the pattern is available through a series on their Instagram stories, which maybe makes it slightly trickier, but it's not too bad. I've taken a look at it. I think it's quite straightforward. Maybe it requires a little bit more extra knowledge and maybe it's not beginner friendly knitting, but I do love this sweater design and I think you could easily just tie lots of different bits of yarn together and not have that base colour if you're up for making something really, really colourful. So that's the first one I recommend taking a look at. I should also add, not only is it made to measure, it's designed for any gauge, so any kind of weight of wool. You just type in your gauge, you just figure out the measurements from your gauge. And I think the Instagram story guide really helps you with that. Okay, the next knitting pattern I have, and then I will get to crochet patterns, is the Flax sweater by Tin Can Knits. Now to me, I've made this pattern hundreds of times. It's a free pattern. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Tin Can Knits patterns because they are so accessible and they're free and they're just excellently written. It was the first proper sweater I'd made, like a sweater in the round. I have previously made other jumpers when I was in my early stages of learning to knit, and they were a disaster looking back, but this is the one where it finally like came together for me. So it's excellent. The coverage of pattern sizes is from baby to adult, and it's great. And obviously this is just plain one colour design, but I do think it'd be very easy to hack and add stripes in there to use up coloured yarn. Obviously if you did it stripy and you wanted to have one kind of base colour, you would need to make sure that the leftover yarn you were using was matching the weight, whether you're holding 2 strands of yarn together, etc. But I do think that has the great potential to be hacked and made stripy to use up your leftover yarn. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but this pattern is available for free from their website. Okay, so now for the crochet garments. So first we have the Ultimate Stash Busting Sweater by Scanlon. It's priced at around $11 US on Ravelry. So this is another made to measure pattern, and I think the designer used worsted weight yarn to make their sample, but it does say that you could use any weight yarn and you simply use the gauge calculation to work out the measurements of the sweater. The cool thing about this is it's also available in a cardigan form as well, so if you didn't want a sweater, you could crochet a cardigan instead and have the same idea. The designer for this one used 17 different colours in one of their samples, so that really shows you have a great opportunity and potential to use up all that leftover yarn through this pattern. And then last up in the garments category is a crochet granny square sweater by Zeens and Rogers. This pattern is available for free, and it's another made to measure one. If you take a look at on the Ravelry, you can see like other projects that people have made that like followed that pattern, and there's some really, really colourful inspiration there. So if you're looking for some inspiration, I recommend checking out the people that have followed the pattern and their projects. It's made with worsted weight, but as mentioned previously, you could hold like 2-3 fingering weight yarns together to get a worsted weight. In general, I do think granny squares as a whole are a great kind of leftover yarn project. I quite a few years ago started doing that with my leftover yarn and making a series of granny squares because I had a lot of a worsted weight cream yarn that I wanted to use up, and then lots of other colours. So I actually have them here. I have this full bag, which you might have seen in the last video. I haven't actually made any of these squares for at least 2 years, maybe 3 now, but they seem to have ended up everywhere with me despite having moved twice and travelled the world. They came in the camper van with us across North America, but I didn't do anything with them. One day I'll decide what I'm going to do. But anyway, so I had like these ones that's just plain, and then one's kind of full, like one colour. But then because I don't mind too much, it's just going to be fun, whatever it ends up being, cardigan or blanket. I also just, where I have had like really, really small balls not wanting to go to waste, I have made these like multicolored ones, which to some people might look a bit much. Oh, there's a hair in there, of course. But I kind of think it's fun, and I don't mind. I think it's cool just to be able to use up your stash in that way. We'll see what I get round to doing with that. Watch this space. So yeah, granny squares in general, but yeah, this granny square sweater, free pattern, looks really cool and fun. Okay, so my next category is blankets / home decor. So I'm going to start with crochet patterns this time, and the first couple of crochet patterns I have for you are blankets. The first one being Minis in a Blanket by Hedgehog Fibers. Now this blanket I have made before. I made it for one of my nephews, and it's a really fun pattern. It's made of 4 panels, and it's been designed with the intention of using up minis like created and dyed by Hedgehog Fibers, but it all kind of fades and blends together in the panels. When I made it, I wasn't using minis or Hedgehog's fiber yarn. I cannot remember the yarn I used, but it was definitely like a mix of things and not just one brand of yarn. But I found it a really fun pattern, kind of blending. I hadn't done a faded project up until that point, so it's quite fun, kind of blending the panels together, getting colours that all kind of work together well, and then pinning those, joining those 4 panels together to make the final blanket. And this is a free pattern. It is a baby blanket, but I imagine that you could easily make it bigger by doing more panels or making the panels longer, etc, etc. And it was really well written. It's a kind of linen stitch effect. I highly recommend checking that out. It's DK weight yarn, but made so by holding 2 fingering strands together, and the reason being for that is because when you're doing that fade effect, you'll kind of keep, as you're losing one colour, you'll keep hold of the secondary colour. I'll go back and explain that better. So you're holding 2 strands of fingering weight yarn together, but they're of differing colours. So, no. So as you're blending, you're obviously going to be changing. If you're holding 2 strands of fingering together, they may start off being the same colour, but then as you're going to fade, you'll introduce one strand with the next colour and then eventually blend it in. So it's not just a decay weight, it's to have that fade effect, you'll be holding 2 strands of yarn. However, I think you can probably just have a decay weight single strand of yarn if you've got a fun variegated speckled yarn or anything like that. You could easily follow the pattern and not do the fade. So if I've made that sound super complicated, don't even worry about it, just have a look at the pattern. The next one is called the Stash Busting Blanket. It's designed by Alison Murray. It's another free pattern available on their website. It looks very straightforward. They have held like 3 strands of yarn together in differing colours. And then it looks to me, it doesn't explicitly say on their site, not that I saw, but it looks like you're just working rows back and forth of either single crochet or double crochet. So super straightforward. This would be a great one for beginners to follow and check out as well. And now for knitted blankets. So the first one is the Scraptastic blanket. So this is very similar in style to that Minis in a Blanket by Hedgehog Fibers that I started off this category with. It's another free pattern and it's worsted weight, so you have the opportunity to hold different strands together if you want to do that faded blended effect. And it's garter stitch, so you can just knit back and forth, quite an easy stitch pattern to follow. They state that it's an opportunity to use all sorts of weights of yarn. Sorry about that, I did have to stop and pause while there was a lot of banging from the builders, and now the lighting has shifted. I have this beautiful beam of sunlight here, but it's now making me a bit shadowy. I've tried to move the camera around or move myself around to see if it makes a difference. And it doesn't really, so apologies if I'm now looking a bit shadowy. It's just that time of the day for our apartment where the light doesn't really come through, so we're in a bit of the dark, so apologies for that. But anyway, where was I? I think I'm still on the blanket patterns. I think I had one pattern to go. Yeah, the Stained Glass Scrap Blanket project by Ladybug Laboratories. So this is a free knitting pattern and it's made of a series of mitered squares. I must admit I didn't know what a mitered square was when I saw this pattern. I did have to Google it, but it looks like essentially, if you don't know, you're working the square from the outside in. And as you can see from this pattern, like Scraptastic stained glass is the perfect description for it. It looks so colourful, just like a stained glass window. And you can see that some of the squares that the designer has made has been made with one colour and others have been knit with multiple colours. So it really is the perfect stash busting project. And the thing that appealed to me about this pattern is that you don't really have to worry about the weight of yarn. If you're making a blanket, all that matters is that you make enough squares to the measurements that you want your blanket to be. So the only thing that will be impacted is if you're using a lighter weight yarn and need to make more squares than a heavier weight yarn. But really that's it, so go have fun with that one. And then the last in my home decor section is 2 patterns. One is this really fun bunting by Buttons and Beeswax. It's just really fun, easy pattern to follow. Some knitted triangles in all different colours. You can have lots of playful fun with this one. I think it'd be great around the house, either like in your at-home office or a nursery. But I also think it'd be fun in a garden or a patio for like, I'm thinking of like summer parties, very British, but yeah, I think they're really fun and probably a beginner friendly pattern to follow as well. And then my last one is one that if you've watched my videos for a while, you'll know that I love this pattern. It's the Stella Quilt Cushion. Now, I've made the Stella Quilt blanket before, very recently in fact. I made it for my latest nephew and I thought the pattern was great, and I did express in my last video that I was wanting to do that pattern again, but perhaps use it to make cushion covers for my couch. But what I didn't realise is that there is actually a cushion version of the pattern that Laura Penrose published herself. So even better, I don't have to try and figure it out for myself. I can just follow the cushion pattern. So yeah, I would definitely be making this because I really enjoyed the blanket pattern and it's very similar, obviously just a different shape. But yeah, I do believe it would be a great way of using up leftover yarn, particularly if you're up for making something really colourful. So I'll keep you posted on that one because I know this is like top of my list of things to do. And then my final category is accessories. So the first accessory I have is the Skinny Pico Headband by Turtle Trunk. So this is a crochet pattern available for about $4.50 US, but there is also a free version on their website. And the size of the headband ranges from baby size to adult size, And I noticed on their website they do have like photo tutorials as well to really guide you through it. It looks like it's made with a worsted weight cotton, which I do actually have plenty of cotton worsted weight left over from the Salt Spring bags that I made last year. So I think I'll be doing this because I do love a headband accessory. And then I also have the Bluegrass shawl by Wool and Pine, which I'm pretty confident I have mentioned before in one of my videos. I just think it's a stunning shawl. I love how colourful it is. It looks so cozy. It's actually knitting, but a brioche knitting. And brioche knitting is not something I have done before, but I think I would like to test it out in 2025. It is time to be learning a new skill. I've just been learning intarsia. Now I think the next one will be brioche knitting. And I would say that in general, I do think Wool and Pine are a good source of pattern inspiration for leftover yarn projects. They do tend to make a lot of their patterns with the idea of using lots of different colours, so I highly recommend checking out their other patterns that they have available on the website and Ravelry and probably Etsy too. And then my last category, which kind of is a subcategory of accessories, are socks. As you know, I love making socks, and there's plenty of stash busting ones out there. Now you could follow like free patterns for vanilla socks, like Sonda Yarn Co has a like basic vanilla sock pattern, as does Summer Lee Knits, and probably a lot of other designers out there, where there is like that vanilla sock pattern. As I mentioned before with like sweaters, you can make stripy versions of those by using it with leftover yarn. At Christmas, there's Remembrance Pottery, a designer who does an advent sock, and they're often, or they are, colour work, so that's also an opportunity to use up leftover yarn. But as I was researching on Ravelry, some other ones did come up that I think look quite fun. Okay, just changed location in the hope that the lighting would be better here. I'm not sure it is. But anyway, my final 3 patterns to share, they're all socks. The first sock pattern is the Scrap Heap Shorties by Kate Agner. These look really fun, very cute. I do love a shorty sock. It's a knitting pattern and it's priced at about $2.99 US on Ravelry. It's available in 3 adult sizes, small, medium and large. I didn't get the exact measurements down in my notes, but it's probably listed within the pattern. Well, it will be listed in the pattern, what am I saying? And it looks like it's a kind of row of colours, and reading a little bit more about it, it seems like you're just going around in a series of stripes, and you can change the colour as you go, and it kind of all blends together to create this kind of fun look. And that's the kind of thing that appeals to me with leftover yarn, just making the stripes as you go. I think I've said before, but I don't mind having fun, silly, colourful socks, because ultimately I wear boots a lot of the time, so you're not going to see them. But also I just love making socks, so I don't really care what they look like at the end of the day. And then my final knitting one is the Scrap Eater socks. And these are designed by Fraulein Stadish. Again, I'm super sorry that I probably have got that pronunciation wrong. I should be much better at that than I am. Fraulein Stadish or Punk Rock Unicorn. That might be, I'm not sure if that was the designer as their like company name or the yarn that they used. It's a knitting pattern. It's available for about €5, which is pretty much the same as $5 US. And these socks are worked from the toe up, and the colour work is worked with intarsia in the round, which really appealed to me because that's actually what I'm doing for the latest sock design that I'm working on. It was new to me skill, and I've been really enjoying learning it for my design. So when I saw that this one is also doing intarsia in the round, I was like, yep, I'm going to try these out and just practice my new skill, because I do like that kind of colour block modular effect that these socks have. So if you fancy yourself a challenge, or you're already great at intarsia knitting in the round, I really reckon I think you should be checking out this pattern. And then finally, I have a crochet sock pattern, and these are called the Flat Crochet Socks by Bruna Tocality. They're available on Etsy for about $8 US. The socks are described as being good for beginners. I think from what I can gather, they're worked flat and then seamed together. It does say that there are video tutorials available, and these are crocheted with a DK weight yarn. So actually crochet socks is something as well on my 2025 to make list, because as I mentioned, I love making socks, but I've never made crochet socks before. So that is something that I want to give a go this year. So maybe I'll be following this pattern too. So there are all the patterns that I found and wanted to share with you. As I've mentioned, they're all saved on a Ravelry board. I'll create a Pinterest board as well, and they'll be listed on the blog on my website, all of which I'll link to in the description below. But I hope you've enjoyed watching this. Let me know which pattern you think you'd be making first. And if you have other patterns, please share them in the comments below, because I'd love to have a look at them. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, please subscribe so you don't miss similar content like this from me. And I look forward to speaking with you soon. See you next time.